We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
There's no combination of words I could put on the back of a postcard. No song that I could sing, but I can try for your heart. And our dreams, and they are made out of real things.
Welcome, everybody. This is Julie Orlov, and you are watching Pathways to Love. I'm delighted to be here with you for another lovely Sunday afternoon. And I am here every week to help you create very strong and intimate relationships in every area of your life. And I've been doing this work for over 25 years now. Gosh, I don't want to get to the point where I have to say 30 years. That's the only thing, but we're still at 25 years. I've been doing this work as a psychotherapist, an executive coach, a speaker, and the author of the Pathway to Love books and programs. And today's topic, you might say, what are we doing talking about divorce on a show that wants to celebrate and create and nurture relationships? But the reality is that some relationships have a life cycle, and that life cycle sometimes ends because it just needs to. And sometimes we need to end a relationship in a powerful way so that we can move on to a more empowering and a relationship that works better for us. So divorce is an important topic, even though it's not a fun topic. I can tell you I've been through my own divorce, and divorces are not fun. But there is a new trend, and there's a way to divorce that is less painful, that can really leave people feeling more intact and create cordial relationships as you move forward in your lives in a much more powerful way. And that's what we're here to discuss today. So as you can tell, I have all my wonderful guests just sitting here waiting to be introduced, and I want to bring them on right now. What we have here today is we have the founder. This is Michelle Danish-Red, and the founder of the San Fernando Valley Collaborative Partners. So welcome, Michelle.
Thank you.
And Michelle is a certified family law attorney. I was almost going to say therapist. I got therapist on my brain.
Specialist.
A specialist. She's a specialist. And also with us from the San Fernando Valley Collaborative Partners is James Walton. Welcome, James.
Thank you.
And James is you're a psychotherapist like myself, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And then we also have Stephen Garelick with us. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you. Welcome.
And Stephen is a certified public accountant. You deal with the financial end of financial planning and advising, and also I think some forensic work a little bit in terms of.
That is correct.
Okay, in terms of going through a divorce. So I want to just open up this conversation now because we have a lot to talk about. But if you want to join in the conversation, we want to welcome everyone to give us a call. If you have questions or comments, please call in. The number is 323-473-3100. That's 323-473-3100. I got to get that straight because it's a new phone number. So I want to make sure I got that. Veneric's shaking his head like I did it correctly. Good. Okay, so let's just start out. I'm going to open it up to the group. First of all, let's explain what is collaborative law. What does that mean when it comes to divorce?
There's so many ways to explain it, but I'll start with one way. Imagine when you're going through divorce and you have all these issues and fears and emotions coming up, and you have a team of professionals, including attorneys, who actually focus on your interests and what's best for you rather than winning a war. So if you have non-adversarial approach, I would say collaborative process is the only non-adversarial process without competition, because families going through divorce, there's already competition, resentment, anger, all sorts of things that goes along with divorce. But we have a team approach that we provide a safe space and guidance and counseling so that you dissolve the marriage with dignity and with wisdom.
And really, from the psychological perspective, and I know James can echo in on this, it's really what's underneath it all is fear. There's so much anxiety and there's so much fear that people are going through. My question to you, though, is okay, in a collaborative process, each party does have an attorney, right? Or is there only one attorney that's dealing with both parties?
Each party has their own collaborative attorney. So in a traditional divorce, you have the lawyers, becomes their game, their war,
Right.
right? In the collaborative process, the lawyers are a team. We're role models for the parties, and we encourage teamwork because these families are going to have to deal with each other sometimes for the rest of their lives, especially when they have children.
Oh, yeah.
So we build communication, we build trust, we build relationship, we build teamwork. So we are completely different types of lawyers, but we are very educated and trained in the law.
And the team that they provide actually are attorneys, mental health professionals, and financial advisors that work together as a team to help the family separate their assets, separate their relationships while maintaining themselves as a family. So it's actually a restructuring of the family, not the end or the solution of a family, but just a restructuring that works better.
So now, I was telling you all before the show that I had a traditional divorce. Now, this went on many, many years ago. But as I was thinking about it, driving to the studio today, I found my blood pressure going up again after, I mean, it's probably been, I don't know, 14, 15 years. It feels like it's been a long time. Because it was such a traumatizing experience. And what I was sharing before the show, and I'll share it with all of you, is that I remember, and I was dragged through the court system for 4 to 5 years. So I know how exhausting that is emotionally, mentally, financially. It doesn't matter whatever way you go about it. It's absolutely exhausting. And approaching downtown Los Angeles in the courthouse that I hadn't been to in a year or two since all this court stuff finally ended. And I felt my heart beating. I felt I was starting to sweat. I was really having an anxiety attack just being near the courthouse. So I'm a full proponent that if there is a way to do this in a less wounding, in a softer, gentler way that eliminates that kind of trauma, I'm all for it. But here to play devil advocate, okay? Because the person I was divorcing, uh, I don't know if he would have been able to do this because he was so locked into there's a winner and there's a loser and there's a right and there's a wrong. And I don't know, honestly, I mean, that's why I'm a therapist and I was married to this guy for a long time and there was no way I could break that pattern in him. So how would you have, let's just use me as a guinea pig. Like, how would you approach our situation, and what do you think you could have done for us to be able to be successful with the collaborative approach?
Well, Julie, that's why we have mental health professionals as part of the team. It really helps to get people to communicate better. So what we would do is we would help him learn how to communicate his needs and wants more clearly. We talked a little bit before we came onto the show. We talked a little bit about what was going on with you, and it sounded like he was taking a position and he had locked himself into a position and he was fighting it. And what our job is to do is to look at what's behind the position. What are the interests that he is trying to protect? And so what we do is we dig behind and we look for what is the interest, and then maybe in the process we can come up with a solution where he can have that interest met while giving up the position. And if he can give up the position, he can do this process.
Right. All right. Well, yeah, that would have been good.
There is, I say there are two aspects of people. There's the hero in men and there's the warrior in men. And we have a system that we bring out the best in people by respect, by listening, by understanding. And if you want to explore the way, I think it's worth your peace of mind, your finances, your children are worth attempting and exploring this option, this non-adversarial option. And I don't know, about your ex-husband or whoever is dealing with the divorce. They, if they have the choice and if they understand this road will lead to these obstacles and this road will give you the support you choose. I don't know if he was given the choice and if he was educated and understood the different pathways, what he would have done.
Yeah, and I also think how the whole process starts with a tone that's set from the beginning makes a huge difference.
Right. One of the things that we try to do is to have what we call a mission statement. What is it that you, going through the divorce, wish to achieve? To resolve that fear of the unknown. How am I going to live? What's going to be my finances? How am I going to reach tomorrow? As well as the idea of the family, keeping the parents, extended family, aunts, uncles, grandparents intact. So a mission statement that everybody agrees to, more importantly, the two that are going through the divorce, they help develop and create that. And through the sessions and through the discussion, we bring them back to here's what you said that you want to achieve.
Right. And I think you hit it on the nail. The two biggest issues in divorce, one is money, because now everybody has to live with less resources, and how are you going to divide those resources up? And I would say most people are terrified of how that's going to impact them financially. And of course, if there's children involved, that's so big. It is just so big, especially when they're young. It's just huge. I mean, there's a lot of emotions that are going on, and it's a process. I mean, when you think about it, it takes a long time, I think, for people to give up on a marriage. I don't think anyone wants to give up on a marriage, and to put in all that work and go through all that struggle to get to the point where you say it's just not going to work anymore. And at that point, then in some ways, the work has just begun. Because, as you say, unraveling, what was the word you used, James? Was it restructuring?
Restructuring, yes.
Restructuring this family unit is not something that happens quickly. It's a long-term process, wouldn't you say?
But the nice thing about this process is it focuses especially on the children. It's extremely sensitive to families and maintaining families afterwards, so they're not fighting. You're not sending messages through the children. You're not making children take sides. And you're educating the parents the entire time on how to communicate better with each other and with your children.
Right. Hold on to that. We have a caller, but this is really important. Let's just get our caller in and we'll come back to dealing with the kids. Hello, welcome to Pathways to Love. Who is this and where are you calling from?
Hi, Julia.
Hi.
This is LaMarshall.
Hi, LaMarshall.
I'm calling from Paramount, California.
And what is your question or comment?
Well, comment really, because you know what? Unfortunately, my computer keeps freezing, so I'm only getting bit and pieces about the conversation, the topic today. And one of the comments I want to, say is that when you talk about divorce, I think that one of the problems with divorce is that people don't know how to accept each other at the positions that we're in at that given time. An argument is something that we don't agree with. So I think that's a major problem with divorcees, that people don't know how. Well, let me keep it on myself. One of my problems with the relationship was I didn't know how to accept my mates for just who they were and just how they were. And when they changed, I didn't know how to accept that change.
Yeah, I think, and I'll open this up also to the panel here, is I think you can predict what the divorce is going to look like by what the issues were in the marriage. I don't think they're too dissimilar. And I hear that's what you're saying a little bit, that if you had problems of accepting your mate or your spouse in the marriage, working on that same issue is going to carry over into as that relationship terminates and as you start to separate your lives. So,
here's what I hear. Okay, you said it very well. Accepting the mate is the first step to be able to resolve it wisely. And what tends to happen in traditional divorce, it is not at all about accepting or understanding. Traditional divorce is about blame, pointing fingers, accusations. It's about competition of who's right and who's wrong. They do not have any opportunity. In fact, they get the opposite reinforcement. So what we do, though, by accepting, then you deal with reality. And that's what
Yes.
we do with the collaborative process. We have families deal with reality. It's not about you should change or you should be any other way or you should not be the way you were and why did you do this. It's getting them there so that they can focus on what we have is what we have and what's the best way now. What are the outcomes? And Stephen Gerlich, one of our professionals, is very experienced and skilled at creating different outcomes to give families choices.
Uh-huh.
One of the things I try to do with the couple, either meeting separately or even together, is
Mhm.
the idea of understanding between needs versus wants.
Hmm.
Everybody wants different things, but how do we, the collective we, develop in such a solution that your needs are met? You need a roof over your head. You've got the children. You got daycare. You've got a job. So together we try to figure something out and discuss budgets, discuss what the estate looks like overall. How does it look, and how will eventually get divided so that everybody gets something that they can work with.
And I agree with that. But my concern again is that divorce. What causes the divorce? I like to talk about the bullseye before we even what causes the divorce. The divorce is because again we as people sometimes as human beings don't know how to accept what it's not comfortable for me.
Well,
If it's not comfortable for me, then I build up a self defensive mechanism and I become closed minded. And
I think your point is well taken, and what I'm hearing, which I think is really fascinating with this, and then we'll close this out. We'll close the call out with this: is that what I love about what you do is in some ways it really mirrors what I talk about in the Pathway to Love program, which is all about the phases and the development of a relationship. And a little bit what you're talking about is the same things that go into how do you create a relationship that's based on respect and even in some ways intimacy, because even though people are divorcing, all that you're saying is that you need to understand who your partner is. You need to identify the real, the needs as opposed to wants, because those are very different, and work on creating a workable plan that everybody can get their top one or two needs met, because it's not, there's only so many resources. Nobody's going to be a perfect mate or spouse.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
and no one's going to be a perfect ex-spouse either.
And Julie, there's another part to this too, and that's when we have the team working together. This might also answer a part of her question, is that we're working together as a team, and the couple is watching us do that. His attorney, her attorney, his coach, her coach, the financial, and we model for the couple how to be respectful and ask questions and negotiate.
Right.
So if they get lost in the process and they're upset, they can watch how we handle it, and then they begin to
Okay.
model that too.
All right.
That makes sense because you want to be the seed, you want to be the change, that I want to see. I understand that. I definitely understand it. But in the layman's terms and realistic terms, if I'm divorcing my husband, no matter what you're doing, it's not going to reflect on how I feel about that man sitting on the other side of the table.
Well,
Unfortunately.
I think a part of that process is what we were talking about before, and we thank you for the call so much, and keep listening to the rest of the show because you may get more of your questions answered. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Julia, and thank you to the panel as well.
Thank you. And I think really that's going back to that divorce is a process. It's not a one-time event. Separating and individuating and restructuring, all those things is a process, and there is a time, and it's appropriate. There's a time in that process, and I know James, you know this, as well as I do, that people are angry, and people are actually can be filled with rage. It's a rage.
They're angry and they're trying to get retribution, and so when they go through divorce, sometimes they're trying to set the score even. And something they have to learn is this is not about making it even. It's about what are you willing to do to move forward in your life? What are you willing to let go of to move forward and get this divorce? It's not about getting back at him for having an affair or getting back at her because of her credit cards. It's not about leveling. It's not about leveling the other person. It's simply about allowing yourself to move forward.
Right.
And that's where the acceptance part comes in, accepting where you are.
And I do think it's important that people give themselves permission and the space to really go through all those stages.
Yes.
And it sounds like that you
the process our process allows for that.
Yeah.
In fact, it is um, the process allows for healing of the relationships because we do want finality. We want them at the end of the process that they actually are free from the past.
I'm curious, how long does it typically take with your collaborative process from beginning to end, or does it really vary from client to client?
It varies from client to client, and this is the only process that the client is in control. So they get to say how long it takes. We're here providing them what their needs are. But what you tend to see when parties are in control, they own their problems and it resolves quicker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you were going to say something, James?
Well, yeah, it just varies depending on circumstances. Sometimes in the middle of a process, a parent will die, and everything has to stop for a period of time and brought back. And when these little crises happen during this process, everyone on the team understands, and no one is trying to take advantage of that opportunity because somebody has an emotional weakness at that moment, and then they can be pounced on. We work with equality, and we work respectfully with everyone on the team so that everyone can feel safe, and it allows more honesty to come to the process. And when people finish this process, they have an agreement that they've both agreed to, and they're more likely to stick to it because they came up with it.
Right, exactly.
And it was respected.
Exactly.
Now, what I love about this process is this is the only career I've ever had where at the end of it, I get a hug from both sides. That's nice.
That's good. And we were talking a little bit about, before the call came in, about kids and how do you handle the issues of trying to keep kids out of it, which is, it's very interesting. I think parents have different emotional styles. So like there are some parents that they keep who they are as a person very separate from who they are as a parent, so to speak. And so the kids may not feel a lot. And I had my own interesting struggles with that. I had two young children at the time. They were 2 and 6 when I separated from my husband. And I obviously spoke to them in language that was more appropriate for their age. But my philosophy as a parent was I'm very open. I believe in open communication. I believe everybody should have the information that they need. Now, with children, that's obviously not the same as what an adult needs. But I'm also very emotionally expressive. And I think if there was one thing that my kids were burdened with, just because of who I am as a human being, is when I'm sad, I'm sad. When I'm happy, I'm happy. When I'm scared, I'm scared. And it's that way whether I'm going through a divorce or not. It just doesn't matter. But I think that's a tough one for parents, because how do you manage all that? Provide the information that your kids deserve. Figure out what they don't need to know. I mean, parenting's hard enough as it is, but to navigate through these waters with children at any age, I don't think it really matters. It's a tough one.
At San Fernando Valley Collaborative Professionals, that's who we are, and the process that we provide is to have that it is child-centered, right? And that's the only process where we have the mental health professionals on our team. We have 4 mental health professionals so that they can choose who fits the family. But the mental health professionals teach the parties how to co-parent. That doesn't happen in mediation or litigation.
No,
but
that's for sure.
But that's a need they have, and it's important because otherwise there's parents are so involved in their own conflicts and issues and concerns. They need the support to focus on the children and how to deal with the issues of the children.
And one of the things that we do actually is we sit down with the parents and we help them create the story of the divorce that they're going to tell their children. So we work together, both individuals and the 2 divorce coaches that are working with them are helping them come up with a story so that they have a united story that they both tell, that they're able to tell their children, that the children can tell their friends and other people what happened. And it's a much healthier way of going at it. So the child isn't making it up in their mind as they're watching it and then coming up with their own story. It's something that the parents tell the child.
Oh my God, I have to share this. I just remember my older daughter, who now is 21. I remember this a couple years ago. She said to me, she says, "Well, Dad told me that now that I'm 18, if I want to see all those divorce files, I can look at them. Yeah, that was the look I had. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And of course my daughter is very wise. She says, "I really don't think I want to read that stuff." I said, "No, you really don't." Yeah. So I mean, it's I'm sure the range of what you have to deal with is huge. But yeah, it's an interesting journey.
Children are naturally curious, and they're going to be curious about it, and then they will create an image in their mind of, if they can't understand something, they will create an image in their mind to have resolution. And so what you're doing is providing that for them.
Well,
one of the things that's very interesting in terms of the idea of the finances is the parties, along with everybody there, can do the creative aspect of who's going to pay what, especially with adult children, that there's no requirement that a parent participate after, age of maturity. And so therefore, those children, or even the children that are going through swimming lessons now and camp and all these other things, they can develop a system in such a way that one's going to pay more or less, or start saving money for that college education down the road.
Right.
And all of these other financial aspects that one doesn't think at the time, but is going to be brought out at some point.
Well, and again, the benefit, I can speak, because my children were basically raised with separate parents, separate households, and that changes. It's what's so fascinating about the whole thing is that in the traditional model, there's so much fighting going over how you're going to handle things today. And it's like today is going to, there's no way in a lifetime of raising children, first of all, the financial resources change. Someone gets laid off, someone gets a raise. One child all of a sudden needs braces. This one decided that they love club soccer. I've been through it all. And so the circumstances are constantly changing and needs are constantly changing. And to me, the key is yes, it's great to come up with a plan, but I love the part where you're role modeling hopefully well enough that those two parties can take what they learned from your experience and carry it forward, because things will change. They will need to say, I got laid off today. How is that going to impact our arrangement? Or, okay, my daughter has dreams of being a professional musician and lessons are expensive. Do we want to do this? How do we want to approach it?
Right. We had medical issues that came about that were kind of known, but pretty much under the surface. And then once it became known, 4 of the children had medical issues, and one of the parents had medical issues that could not longer work. And so when the issue of support and who's going to pay what support, the tables were turned.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality check that, what do you mean? I've got to pay that person as compared to me getting that money? Yeah, that's a reality check as to be careful what you're asking for and how you want to frame it, because you're now going to be sitting in that position.
I want to talk about a reality check here, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Reality is if you don't choose your process and you end up in the litigation process, your kids' college funds get spent on attorney's fees.
I concur.
Okay, another reality is, here we are saying the concerns, which is beautiful, the children's interest, they may be interested in soccer or interested in dance. What tends to happen, if you look at what happens in the divorce courts, children involved in litigated divorces end up with a lot of emotional issues. We have a lot of mental health issues that the courts deal with. And I spoke with the judge. It's not that this kid was born with this problem. This is the impact of the divorce. So unfortunately, what we don't realize in a litigated divorce, we're talking about how to deal with these diagnoses of autism, bipolar, and all these mental health, ADD, different mental health issues that the parents then use to fight each other about and blame each other about.
Right.
And all this money gets used to do that.
Right.
Whereas it's
in the public arena.
Absolutely.
It's all public.
Yes. And so and that's what I'm talking about. Reality is having the family spend the money and the focus so that the children can be concerned about what they want rather than develop
Well,
issues.
I think, you're an attorney. You certainly know what the traditional model looks like. For those who have not been through it, the family court system is awful. I'll just put it in a nutshell. It's awful. And if people think that quote unquote justice gets served and the right decisions are made, no, that's not the case at all. You've got judges that have their own biases. Some are simply in a bad mood. Some don't like you and the way you're talking that day. Some don't like your attorney because they've had a bad experience with your attorney in the past. Sometimes they get it. Sometimes they don't. It's a crapshoot. Honestly, it's a crapshoot, and it's so not human friendly. I mean, I know that everybody's doing the best they can, so I'm not knocking. It's a system. We have to, I like this system better that you've started, and I think it's gaining momentum. People are becoming more aware of that option, but people do need to know what the realities are of the traditional system. I didn't have heart palpitations 2 years after driving downtown for nothing. And it wasn't because of my ex-husband. I could drive to his house and not have heart palpitations. I had it because I was going to the courthouse. And and you have somebody who's your family is a stranger to them. Like you have this one person called the judge. This has always fascinated me. You have this person called the judge who knows nothing about your family. He knows nothing or she knows nothing about your children. She's taking information that's just snapshots from one camera perspective in one moment of time and has no idea. And they are making decisions that are so huge. They are so huge. And to me, the decisions about the money, well, granted that's important, but to me, the only thing that counted was what was in the best interest of my kids. I could care less about the money, But the other thing about the courts, so I just have to rant to give the other picture because now it's all coming back. The other thing about the courts is that they tie money to the kids.
Yes.
And this is tragic because once you start tying timeshare, that it's a proportion of how much time you're spending in one household versus the other household to money, you have no idea the floodgates that I know you guys know, and anybody who's been through it knows the floodgates that are opened and what that now starts to create. And it's just
especially now that the new laws allow children over 14 to testify in court, and then it's even more traumatic to the children. And there's some ugly results that could happen. The parents get into the fight of blame and accusation, and it becomes like a vicious cycle in such a way that some kids are removed from the family, and then they're dealing with Department of Children's Services and dependency courts, and it's just trauma that you never want your family exposed to. It gets out of control, and we're here to give control back to the families. We support them so they can be calm and rational and handle their own problems.
Yeah, and I agree. When people have the sense of control, because that's really it. I mean, a lot of this gets out of control and you do feel out of control. Your lives are all of a sudden, they are out of control. It's a real feeling.
Well, if I can make the analogy of an orange, if you allow the court to decide who gets what, it's like taking a cleaver and splitting that orange in half and just giving you half of it. Maybe you just want the pulp. Maybe the other person wants the skin. So what we do is we help people tease the pulp from the skin, and everybody gets what they want in the process, rather than having someone arbitrarily come along, cut the thing in half.
Now, have you ever had an experience? Because, again, I mean, I know this experience firsthand, and I know that I am not the only one that has this. That's getting that locked in. So there's a power struggle that has begun. It gets out of control really fast. People take positions and then they get entrenched with positions, or you have one person with a position. My experience is I would give an inch thinking I would get an inch back, and then I learned really quick I give an inch and someone wants another yard, and it never worked. So what do you do? Have you ever had an experience where really someone is locked in? Like, what do you do? Because that's a reality out there. I don't know if this can work for every single family, but
it does not work for every single family, but every single family deserves an opportunity to choose. And how we get there is really listen to what is important to them. So we listen to their position, as James said, what's underlying, what's the interest, and we focus on the interest. And a lot of times, we focus on their common interests. once they see their common interests and they relate to how it's important to them, they can kind of let go of their positions. So you want to kind of guide them through a process where they look at everything and then they can kind of let go of their position because they understand what really matters to them.
Well, and what I love is there's so much coaching, guidance, role modeling, and teaching about this is all relationship skills. It's like really no different. It's how do you have a relationship with another human being? All these things go into creating healthy relationships with people in your lives. So it's nice that at least if they're coming out of something that didn't work for whatever reason. And my take is that there's probably half of the marriages that end that don't have to end. And there's probably the other half that it's not a bad thing. It may be the best thing for everybody that relationship ends. So I kind of feel like it's 50-50 with people who get divorced. But if you do have to dissolve a marriage, what a lovely way to gain some skill and gain some wisdom and gain an experience that you can take into your future relationships.
Yeah, but
It's like
what I want them to see, because people who are involved in divorce, they are not necessarily open to relationship and all of that. But
No.
what they can hear
They
is
just want the guy out of her life
Right.
or her out of his life.
But
They're
what I
done.
want them to hear is if you don't want to be humiliated, if you want to protect your finances, protect your children, and make sure that you get a fair outcome, that's the way.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. All right, I think this is a perfect place to take a break. You have been watching Pathways to Love. We have had a great, stimulating conversation on divorce and a collaborative approach and process to divorce. We will be back in about 2 minutes. I'm Julie Orlov. We'll see you then.
And there's no tenderness like before in your fingertips. You're trying hard not to show it. But baby, I know it. You must have love and feeling. Oh, that love and feeling. You must have love and feeling. Now it's gone, gone, gone. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Now there's no welcome for you.
And my car ain't brand new, but there is joy in my house.
Hello, I'm Joel Ramirez
And I'm Lolita Robinson Coppage, and welcome to Joy in My House
on LATalkLive.com. Inspirational radio,
with a touch of recovery.
a reality show where nothing is left unsaid,
And no one is insignificant who says it.
exclusively on LATalkLive.com. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B or watch us on Ustream TV.
Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hi, everybody. This is Alan Azoulay with Azoulay Media in conjunction with Code 10 Studios here to promote the Reel to Reel Hollywood Short Film Festival. It's going to be a red carpet event you won't want to miss. It takes place on Saturday, August 24th. The Los Angeles Harmony Gold Theater, a beautiful theater that's featured many of films. We're going to be represented by Cal State University Long Beach, New York Film Academy, USC, LA Film School, and Chapman University Dodge College of Film. You'll want to secure your seats as soon as possible to this event because it will sell out. Go to r2rhollywood.com. That's the letter R, the number 2, the letter R, Hollywood.com for your choice of Block 1 or Block 2 of films, or buy a ticket for the entire day. It's time to support, connect, and celebrate our emerging filmmakers. I hope to see you there.
Hi, this is John McClure Jr., aka Simply John, and I would like to invite you to join us on gospelrhythms.com every Sunday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, for our show, GospelRhythms.com Talk Live Radio. Join us as we celebrate Christians around the world in all genres of entertainment, as well as highlight interest stories on men and women who are making a difference and impacting their community. So don't forget to tune in to GospelRhythms.com on LA Talk Live. And we're more than just talk. Remember, it's a heaven's party here on earth. So live life, love God.
Tell me what's wrong with you now. Tell me why.
All right, everyone, welcome back to Pathways to Love. You are watching the show. I'm Julie Orlov, your host, and I'm here with my wonderful guests that are all from the San Fernando Valley Collaborative Professionals. We have Michelle Danishred. She is an attorney, family law specialist attorney. Let me see if I got that right. We have James Walton. He is a mental health specialist, psychotherapist. And we have Stephen Garelick, who is a financial advisor, CPA, and a bunch of other things that I don't even, a bunch of letters that I don't even know what they mean, but I'm going to look them up one of these days and find out. But Stephen, we were talking a little bit during the break about the financial aspects of divorce and that whole issue of dividing these assets up. And that's such a huge, that's one of those points of contention that couples have when they're going through this. So can you speak to a little bit about how your process approaches it in a better way?
Well, I think the better way is, in essence, it's more transparent up front than the hiding of the assets, where through litigation, it's let me give you what you want through the list that you talk about, and if there's more to be had, ask me for it, rather than just being candidly and upfront and saying, here's the population of the bank accounts, the jewelry and the cash in the safe deposit box, whatever it happens to be, it's all out there up front. I found that over a period of time that the term being discovery or the idea of sharing documents, that in itself can cost either time and or the clients 25% of the fees right there, because one is such and so resistant to that process of showing the other and educating the other as to really what the estate has. Sometimes it turns out that one party has no idea, literally no idea, of what goes on as far as the household budget, what bills are being paid. The only thing they know is they can go to the ATM, put in the card, and $200 pop out. That's the aspect of the finances that one spouse might have.
And how do you work with, again, there's so many fears and there's so much competition in the area of money. Like you get people who maybe are primary breadwinners that all of a sudden say, why should I support you afterwards? I know there's a lot of issues where even with child support, I mean, we talked about child support being tied up to visitation, but also this whole issue of, there's a lot of, and I hate to be biased, but just because it's just the way it's been more historically, I think that's changing. But so if there's a dad who's paying the mom child support, which is probably still the typical way that it occurs, there's a sense that I'm giving that money to you. Like they don't see it that it's for the children. They see that it's going to an ex-spouse that they don't want to have the money.
Right.
Like there's, you know what I mean? It gets very convoluted.
The creativity is how we adjust to allow the paying spouse, so that when they're paying child support, they don't necessarily directly give that check to the parent to do, but it's in a different format. And under this umbrella, we can create a way that the child will still receive that benefit along the time, and the parent that is the payor parent doesn't have that emotional pain and an attachment to those dollars as to where they're going to go.
If I can address
Sure.
something that came up for me, a lot of times parents who go through the traditional divorce, they realize, oh my God, Now we had not arranged for college education. What am I going to do? I, I have no way of dealing with it now. Whereas in the collaborative process, we do address those things and we plan for those things. And there's a way we address them. See, when you try to force someone to do something, they will resist. They will not want to do it. And that's the traditional approach.
Mm-hmm.
The way we deal with it, for example, if the wife is my client, right? I have my client appreciate what he's providing. Treat him as the provider. Thank you for providing. And then there's a pride that goes with providing. It does help, believe it or not. It does. They're going to pay. They know they have to pay anyway, but it's a different way of relating to them, which in the collaborative approach, which has them be more open.
Well, there's a long journey to get to there before going through a divorce. I'm telling you, if your team can get somebody to say, "Thank you so much
Yes.
for giving," I'm
yes.
telling you guys are miracle workers. That's all I can say.
Actually, Julie, what we do at the very first meeting when we have the whole team together with the couple, and it's something that I do with them, is one of the first things that they do is they have to say something nice about the other person. They've been married for a while. They fell in love at one time. They may not be now, but they have a history of some positive things. And they must be able to appreciate something about that person. And they say one nice thing about each other, and you would be surprised how quickly people are able to become cooperative at that moment.
You know, I think that's true. I actually remember this moment with my ex-husband. It's really interesting. I think the last court thing, I was just so exhausted. And I thought, how in the world can I turn this thing around? This needs to stop. And I went to him. I needed to pick up my daughter. It was like midnight. It was very late one night. And so I was picking up my daughter, and he greeted me at the door, and she was still asleep. You know, it was one of these late night things. And so I told him, and partly what I did is I acknowledged that it wasn't that, is he the bad guy or am I the bad guy? You know, I kind of said, you know what, that I understood that we both have played a part in really creating this war that had been taking place, and that I apologize for my end of it. You know, I said, whatever I've done to keep this thing going and fuel that fire, I take responsibility for it, and I'm very sorry. And I told him, I said, what I really want is I want us just to have peace. I want us to have a peaceful relationship, and one where we can be cooperative for the sake of our kids. I said, that's what I'm up for at this point. And it was a very vulnerable thing because he's
Mm-hmm.
very threatening.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this was very ugly, and I was leaving myself open for him to use that again as a weakness, because that had been my experience. But this time, he completely softened.
Mm-hmm.
And he turned to me and he said, I really appreciate that, and I want the same thing.
Great.
And I'm going to tell you that he has never taken me to court. I have never had to step in court again since
great.
that one day.
That happens sometimes, and we do help people who are exhausted in litigation.
Right.
But you don't have to go bankrupt emotionally, financially, to
Right.
finally say, okay, I'm done with this.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sharing this story so that people can learn from it and say, you know, you don't need to be X thousands of dollars into it, exhausted, traumatized.
Yeah.
And if there's another way, and there's a way, if you can approach it in a way that leaves you intact and gives you dignity and is easier on the children, and that money, like you say, that can go into being earmarked or whatever. I mean, I think you have to be very creative, especially with the money and the visitation. I think when it comes to kids and money, the more you're working with professionals that can think out of the box, and things that nobody may not have considered before, that's key. Would you not say?
So in our process, the way I deal with it is parents work with the mental health professionals to create a parenting plan.
Mm-hmm.
Lawyers don't have to have a business in that.
Right.
What tends to happen, it becomes a lot less expensive, and it's not adversarial. It's really creative in what works for the family. And then later, I want to share a story. about the collaborative when you see appropriate?
We actually don't call it custody or visitation. We call it the parenting plan.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes some of the charge out of out of that definition, and it puts some more equality in it. That both the parents have designed the plan. It's not something that's forced upon them. They've created
Right.
it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, one of the things that James pointed out was the idea of what do you want to get, or the apology that you were speaking of. I am probably, in fact, I am the only neutral in the room. I'm not aligned with one side or the other. They don't have, I'm not that attorney that is protecting their rights and doing, for them, or the coaches in a two-coach model in terms of working with that person. I'm the one that can listen to everything that's being said, having a one-on-one, having, both parties with me. And what's nice about this process is instead of just sharing it with only one side with what I hear, I share it with the professional team. And by sharing through the professional team, everybody then aligns themselves around the issue, rallies between this concern, and how do we now deliver it to the clients in such a way that helps them through that resolution.
Right. And I imagine that financially, you must come up with all different kinds of plans. That takes whatever. If it needs to take the sting out of, I mean, I remember even in my experience at one point, it had to do with attorney's fees, and it came down to, okay, I cannot write a check to your attorney. Like, I'm not going to do that. But he was willing to say, but I'll write a check to the children's education fund.
Great.
You know what I mean? So I said, all right, I'll have to look at it as if, so I had to shift my thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I have to look at it that it's going to the kids fund, and not, so there's different ways to do it. But yeah, I think you have to be really creative about those things.
There is a lot of creativity because outside of the courtroom, the court has its laws, and they're not going to deviate from any of those laws. They're not allowed to.
Mm-hmm.
There is some what they call judicial discretion, but outside of that and how limited that still might be, and the rules that go behind that, here in the process, it's everybody sitting around and going, what is the best solution, the best way to handle your family and your ongoing family? And when everybody understands that that is really the entire focus, bringing it back to them, their children, it's a wonderful thing to see. And
Yeah.
James was right, getting the hugs at the end and all the things that go on. Absolutely.
We really aim for fairness, and it's not one side trying to take advantage of the other. Like I said earlier, if there's a weakness that can be exploited, all the team members are looking at fairness on both sides of the table. We don't want someone walking away feeling like they've been completely taken advantage of. We want them to be feeling, yes, they didn't get everything that they wanted. Nobody does. But they did get some of the things they wanted, and they don't feel like they've been run over the coals.
Right.
They were heard.
They were heard.
More importantly, that's an amazing thing just in its own right. They have a story. They want that story to be told, and they want somebody to hear it.
Yeah, in court, that's why they have representation, and what they think matters or what they want to say, a lot of times they don't get to say,
Mm-hmm.
and it's their case.
There was an interesting thing that happened in one of the cases I was working on, and the couple was sitting there and they were dividing up property, and we were helping them figure out what property they wanted to take and what they were willing to let go of. And right in the middle of that, one of them stopped and said, "Do you know why I want the divorce?" And the other one said, "I don't know." And so they explained why they wanted the divorce, and then we allowed for the other person, and we took about 10 minutes processing that.
Mm-hmm.
And then once they both felt heard, once they both were able to express their part in it, and they both took responsibility for the relationship failing, we were then able to go back and finish dividing up the property. And it took a tremendous amount of pressure off. Both sides felt some relief. They were heard. This is a process that probably wouldn't happen in any other situation, but doing it collaboratively.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, we are getting close to the end of this. I told you this hour flies by, and it's such a huge topic. I think we could go on and on for it, but I think what I want people to take away is that divorce is a process, and you have choices on how you decide to move forward in that process. And I can speak personally that the traditional avenues that I felt were available to me at the time are painful and they are exhausting. And there's so much that you have to go through, anyways, with a divorce. But I'm so glad to hear that your group is available and that there's an approach out there that is what I like to call human friendly, relationship friendly, family friendly, all of that, that really supports people in coming out of this hole and having as positive as an outcome as possible. So I'm sure people are going to want to reach you. So please tell them how they can reach the San Fernando Valley Collaborative Partners and
Okay.
how they can do that.
So first of all, there are 18 of us professionals, and we couldn't have all 18 be here. And I would have loved for you to be able to meet each and every one of us because I'm proud of each and every one of us. We have about 12 attorneys, 4 mental health professionals, and 3 financial experts. So I would invite you to come to our website. It's www.valleycollaborative.com or SFVCP, San Fernando Valley Collaborative Professionals. And there you can read about every single one of us and what we do provide. And feel free to contact any one of us to find out more about your options.
Yeah, and if anyone wants more information, I always remind people that on the blog, on the website, under my radio show, you'll have all the information about our 3 guests today, but we have information. You'll have the link to get to the website for the collaborative practice. And I encourage those of you who are contemplating divorce, even if you've just started the traditional way and you feel like it's not working, and you want to change paths, there is a way to do that. And you can get all that information at julieorlov.com or thepathwaytolove.com. I can't thank the 3 of you enough for coming here and spending a lovely, beautiful Sunday afternoon with me. I commend you and I applaud you for the work that you do.
Thank you.
It is so important. As my gift, I always tell people I'll sign a personal copy of The Pathway to Love. And what I can't tell you what's exciting to me as I hear about what you do with all your clients is in some ways you take them through my 4 phases of a developing relationship. You just do it in the context of divorce, which I think is beautiful because it tells me that they're coming out with an understanding of how relationships develop, even under the irony, kind of the irony of a relationship that's ending, which tells you, what, relationships, they may end, but they don't end.
Julie, it's all about love.
Yes, it is.
I also wanted to point out we do it in the context of premarital agreements before marriage. So we do prenups without anger, resentment, or competition.
That's good. And like I said before, if you're already feeling competitive angry and resentment right before you get married, stop. Go get the Pathway to Love program at home.
Perfect.
Start there.
Perfect.
Then when you get that resolved, then go make your appointment with the Valley Collaborative Practice. And there you go. All right. So if you need to reach me for any reason or you need more information on any of our shows, please feel free to visit, again, julieorlov.com. You can always reach me at 888-99-PATHS. That's 888-99-PATHS. It has been a joy to spend another Sunday afternoon with all of you. You have been watching Pathways of Love. I'm your host, Julie Orlov. I want everyone to have a fabulous week, and I'll see you here next week. Goodbye, everybody.
Love grows in me like a tumor, parasite bent on devouring its host. I'm developing my sense of humor till I can laugh at my heart between your teeth, till I can laugh at my face beneath your feet. Skillet on the stove, it's such a time.